Well, our guest today has lots of energy, and I can prove it. Not only is she the mother of seven, but she's the author of 11 books, including Half Price Living, a tip of the day with Ellie Kay, and The Debt Diet. She's a sought-after speaker and has served as a consumer educator and official spokesperson for Procter & Gamble, Visa Providian, and MasterCard. You'll recognize her as a regular TV guest on CNBC's Power Lunch, Fox News, and CNN. Ellie is also Walmart's official financial help expert. And in her spare time, she's authored a 12th book, Living Rich for Less. Create the lifestyle you want by giving, saving, and spending smart. Ellie, thank you for joining us during your very crazy schedule here on the couch. Can we leave you alone? Do you want a nap for a while? Or?
Are you like the mom in the video?
You can relate to that video.
I've said those things too. I've tried not to say them, but I do.
Yeah. Well, your book, I mean, saving money, how appropriate is it, especially for right now in the day that we are living? We so appreciate having you here. Now, you are everywhere. I mean, everyone's calling you in for your financial expertise. What are you finding are the most asked questions these days?
Well, people are just wanting to know what's going to happen, for one thing. I mean, they're really concerned, and even people that may not be threatened with downsizing at their company, or they may not be looking at a job loss, are still becoming far more conservative in their spending. And what's interesting to me is that I've been speaking about finances for 20 years. I've been published for 10 years, and just in the last year, people actually start to listen, you know? It's like, oh great, you're finally listening, you know, to some of the ideas on how they can get out of debt and why they should be on a budget and, you know, the smart way to spend their money.
But this isn't just because we're in a financial crisis right now. I mean, I think, in fact, this is what got us into this financial crisis. We've been living beyond our means for far too long.
That's true. Yes, we really have. And, you know, last year we saw the mortgage bubble really burst, and right now we're seeing the consumer debt bubble burst, and it's going to continue, I believe, for probably at least the next 2 to 3 years. We're going to see a lot of ramifications of what's happening now and fallout from that. That's why, though, now is a very good time to get your finances in order. And I really don't believe that we have to be fearful about what's around the next corner. I mean, if God is in your corner, then you have no reason to fear. And if your finances are not lined up with His principles, then maybe you should be afraid, because you need to get them right.
You know, I loved about your book, it's pretty simple. Like I was saying how last night I was with Pete and we were just kind of reading through the principles, and very simple things to get yourself out of debt. And like I learned a lot in the book, but one of the things I just wanted you to talk a lot about is your 10-10-80 principle that you talk about in the book.
Well, yes, you know, the 10-10-80 plan is basically where you take the first 10% and that's your tithe. And I like to say that the sweetest dollar that you ever make is the one that you could give away. So that's the very first 10%. And you'll find there are consumer experts out there, that Susie Orman and David Bach, and a lot of the experts talk about the tithe. They may not mean, you know, full 10%, but they talk about giving away. The difference with what I advocate is that it's the biblical approach, so it's the first 10%, not what's left over. And then the second 10% is saving. And one of the things I recommend to make that happen is to just take it as an allotment before it's even in your paycheck and just send it automatically to the bank. Have your employer do that if they can do that at work. But it's important to save 10%. And I like to say that the safest dollar that you ever make is the one that you can put away. And then we have the last 80%, and that is spending wisely. And, you know, the smartest dollar that you ever make is the one that you can spend wisely.
Wow. You do talk a lot in your book about giving, about having the attitude of giving. In fact, you weren't trained that way. You were just naturally that way. When you were a little girl, you learned how to give and how to support other children in other countries, didn't you?
Well, it was really fascinating. I mean, when I kind of look back on my childhood, it was normal for me, but as a mom now, I look and I think, wow, you were a really different little kid, because I had my first business at the age of 7. And it was the handshake.
And it wasn't a lemonade stand.
It was, you know, it was a handshaking business. I found a buzzer in a box of cereal, and no one in my second grade class had that. And in my little mind, I decided, hey, I could make some money. And so I charged for handshakes.
I like the fact that you charge the boys more.
And I charged 15 cents for boys and 5 cents for girls. And I made all these nickels and dimes, and in 2 weeks' time, I made $10. And that's a lot of handshakes. And my mom said that $1 of that was the Lord's tithe. And it was a new concept for me. So when I went to Sunday school, they were taking up a special offering for children in Africa. And I have a real vivid imagination. And in my little 7-year-old brain, I thought of the faces of those children. And I imagined them smiling and laughing and getting food with my dollar. And I still remember that experience of placing that dollar in the offering plate. And the Spirit of God came over me as a 7-year-old. And I realized this is the sweetest dollar, the best dollar I can ever make, is the one that I can give away to help other people.
So you learned early
Yes.
to share
Yes.
with what you have, to be wise in obtaining it, and
Right.
then to share what you earn.
Exactly.
In fact, all of the lessons in your book, you have personalized. You've had to do them.
Yes. Yes, you know, I do have a professional background. I was a broker, I was a business major. I had my own business at 7, and I had multiple businesses all the way up to where I paid cash for my first car at the age of 15. So
Wow.
I had that entrepreneurial background and the business background, but then when I married my husband, I left my full-time work. He had 2 children. He had $40,000 worth of consumer debt. We had 5 children in 7 years. So we have a total of 7 children. So we moved 11 times in 13 years.
Because he was in the Air Force.
Yes, he's the world's greatest fighter pilot. Just ask him, he'll tell you. And so we had these incredible challenges. So I've been on both sides of the fence. I've had much and I've had little. And I've learned one thing, and that God is faithful. Whether you have much or you have little, if you give him your finances, if you put things in proper biblical order, then he will meet you where you are, and you'll always have enough.
You know, the Bible.
Was that hard for you though, marrying a man? I mean, being who you are, this natural-born saver, marrying a man who had that much debt,
Right.
and children and all of these things. I mean, were you kind of going into this?
It was difficult. It was because he was a born spender. You know, and I would he would go to the electronics store to buy some batteries, and he'd come back with a VCR. And it was like, no, what are you doing? But then I was a little obsessive, okay? I was a little compulsive about saving money. And it was like, no, we can't go to McDonald's because it's not 99-cent Happy Meal Day. We can only go on Tuesdays to McDonald's. And he's like, you're a little obsessive. So we had to balance, you know?
That is a big question, because I mean, if I can be honest, I tend to be more the spender and Pete the saver, my husband. And you know, married for 3 years, that is a big issue of money and spending. And when you have a spouse that is opposite in you,
Right.
how do you deal with that? Because I know a lot of my friends are in that same boat as well, and trying to navigate and figure out, you know, what's the best way to compromise in these areas.
Right, and you know, I think you have to have a plan when it comes to talking to your spouse about money. And back at the very beginning, Bob and I developed this 60-minute money workout. And people can email us, we'll send you a free copy of what that's like. But here's the deal. You have a start point and you have a stop point. So I mean, when it comes, you know, to the idea of talking about money to your spouse, most people would say, let me babysit teething triplets. I mean, I don't want to talk about money. It's so painful. Ooh, I hate it. But if it has a start and a stop, then you have an agenda for that. You know, you have a warm up and you have boundaries. So you can't say that is so stupid, or you know, some of these things that that spouses say to each other, and a lot worse, unfortunately. So I mean, you have these healthy boundaries. There's no such thing as an ignorant question. There's, you know, and you don't throw food at each other. You know, I mean, you have to have those healthy boundaries, and you'll find that as you set a certain amount of time for every part of your discussion, you know, just 10 minutes to talk about the budget, another 10 minutes to talk about goals, then the hour just flies by. And even if you don't solve all your financial problems in 1 hour, you've usually made some kind of progress. And the important thing is that you've discussed things in a healthy way and in a safe environment. And as people start to do this money workout, some couples need to do it twice a week, some can do it once a week, some can do it once a month. But as they start to do this, just like when you're working out at the gym, you're going to find yourself getting stronger, you're going to find yourself making progress, and you're going to find yourself with the ability to talk about money.
By the way, I just wanted to mention, you mentioned if anyone wanted to receive that, they can contact you. The link to Ellie and her book and everything that she's about is on our website at crossroads.ca, so just make sure you go there and you can get in touch with Ellie.
I was just going to say the posture here I think is really important. The Bible says fretting tends to evil, takes you in a place you don't want to go. You and your husband, despite this overwhelming financial need, distress, had love and God at the center. You were crazy about each other,
Right.
and you approached it as an adventure.
Yes, that's the way that we looked at it. It was Bob and I did some things different in our marriage. One of the things we decided to do early on was to call each other beloved. And I don't call him Bob. If I call him Bob, he thinks I'm mad at him. So it's a little bit embarrassing, if we're in the middle of a store and I'm trying to get his attention. Beloved! Oh my goodness.
Even when he comes home with the VCR.
Right. And then when we're angry, it's more like beloved. So he'd rather be calling Bob. So we know at least where we're at. So we did some things differently. And one of the things we did that was different when we were first married is we decided to look at all that consumer debt and the whole idea that we didn't have enough money as an adventure. And that may sound like a radical, unconventional thing, but guess what? I think we serve an unconventional God. And I think that when you bring God into your problems, then it is the great adventure. Because He's the one, you're going to see how He provides. You're going to see the creative ideas that He gives you to get out of debt. And you're going to find that it really has a lot of hope attached to it when you look at it that way.